Thank you so much, man. It's a pleasure having you here. Let's get right into it. We just actually witnessed game one of EG versus CDEC. I know you were also spectating there. EG took that one. Could you give me your quick thoughts on what you think about the game, how it went and stuff?
I think EG had a really good game plan, and I thought that they outdrafted CDEC pretty hard. And CDEC actually made some really good moves to kind of have a chance into the game, but EG just definitely had the better plan, so that's why they won game one. But looking forward to see game two soon.
So, from a layman's perspective, it appears that they had the Winter Wyvern, they had Bane to kind of have maybe answers to that very signature style early aggression. Could you perhaps elaborate a bit more on if you think there was more apart from those two picks that you think EG did well in adapting to this game, and also explain a bit what you meant with CDEC adapting to that as well?
I think EG had a really nice idea with the whole tiny middle. The thing that was interesting to see is that CDEC actually last picked Dragon Knight because they felt they needed some kind of a frontliner in some way to actually finish the game. But they picked that into the Bane Tiny, which basically destroyed any melee hero middle. The Bane with null talisman just keeps hitting you for a million damage, and you saw what happened. Basically, the Tiny kept on the Dragon Knight kept on dying. So I think that was really good for EG. And then they had basically CDEC had to focus on too many lanes. They had to shut down the Doom Wyvern, which was doing a lot of work, and they had to help out middle. But at the end, basically, EG got like a really, really fat Tiny who did a lot of work. CDEC, they just play really well in team fights, and they have really good moves. They do everything really quick. That's why they win most of their games. I feel like some games their strategy is really on point, but against EG, I think EG usually was a step ahead in draft, but CDEC sometimes just makes quicker movements than them, and then they win that way. So that's what I meant when they had some nice moves. That some smokes were really quick, really nice. They got some pickoffs, but at the end of the day, EG was the better team that game.
All right, then let's switch topics and go over to your team's performance in this tournament so far. You came out on top versus Fnatic, and you will be going up against Virtus Pro next. I talked to G, and he said apart from the fact that you guys have a very good game understanding, he sees your guys' Tiny Wisp as top of the world, actually. And one thing I did want to ask you about is that he said in an analysis about your guys' playstyle is that you have in your team 4 players that are very experienced in the support gameplay, and then of course you have your carry player who kind of is also, he said, the heroes that he is able to play because he didn't know how versatile, like how many heroes he can play, but the ones that he does play, he just knows how to play very well. Would you say that's a correct assessment?
I think it's a pretty good assessment. Of course, thanks to G for calling us, the best Tiny Wisp. That's always a nice thing to hear. I think 3 of us at least are very experienced supports. I think Moon hasn't played enough support to be called one of the top supports, but I know he has done it before, so he has some understanding. But yeah, I think that's a fairly good assessment overall. Yeah, and Miracle, of course, he's very good on the heroes he's comfortable with. He's definitely one of the best. So.
And the Fnatic game was actually the best of 1. It was Mineski was the best of 3 came at. Why I wrote on Fnatic was because you had Wisp, Tiny, and Huskar in that match, and that was ridiculous. That was a fun match to watch. Could you talk about how the draft went, if you can recall that and the game a bit?
Yeah, going into best of 1s, you obviously don't really know what to expect, and after we had some time to review Fnatic and think about what we want to do against them, and from Fnatic's games, there was no clear pattern of what they actually pick. It changes a lot. The bans and picks they have every game is very different, so we just kind of tried to figure out how they play overall. And then going into the game, we were like, all right, we had some sort of an idea of what we want to ban and what we want to pick, but we didn't actually expect getting Wisp or IO. So when we got that, I was like, all right, insta-picked it. We were really happy because we know that's definitely one of our most comfortable heroes. So pretty much going on from there, the drafts are very standard for us because we played a lot of IO combos, and drafting with IO is something that's really easy for us. So it was pretty easy from there on from our side.
And you came out ahead versus Mineski in a best of three. How did you perceive the game or the series in terms of how hard it was for you guys to play in there, and in terms of how successful you were in getting drafts that you wanted?
I felt like we definitely figured Mineski out. The first game, it showed mostly that we kind of took away the slaughter that they love running, and we're also very comfortable with it, and we ran the Shadow Fiend, the hero that we're also kind of known for. I felt like Mineski wasn't as prepared for us because they kept on giving us Shadow Fiend, which is something teams usually don't do, and we are once again very comfortable drafting around that hero. So I feel like both drafts we had the upper hand, and we just had to basically be careful of their early aggression where they move around a lot. The second game, for example, the Queen of Pain got a lot of kills, but we kind of stopped the bleeding at one point, got a kill on him, and then we were pretty much snowballing through there. So I think Mineski definitely showed some good plays, but I think they're not there yet.
Can you give me your thoughts on Undying? I'm not sure. I've reviewed a few games. I didn't see you pick it. Do you value it? Have I just missed you guys picking it? What are your thoughts on the hero?
We had it in the second game against Mineski. Undying, yeah. We play Undying every once in a while. I think it's definitely one of my comfort heroes, and I think it's a very good hero in this metagame. The way he's being played now is being a little more shifted. Before it used to be all about the dual offlanes, and now it's kind of like, all right, maybe you can dual offlane, maybe you can just zone safe lane, maybe you can dual mid. Like, he's pretty versatile in his laning now, and I think the hero still has a very high impact on the game because Tombstone is still an insane ability, and the fact is that it basically got like a bit of a buff for the later stages of the game where carriers can't just two-shot it now. You actually need a certain amount of hits for it. So I think Undying is a good hero. He definitely has his place, and we definitely run him as well.
All right, so let's switch gears a bit, talk about team dynamics. Back at the last international, you were on a team that actually placed a lot of emphasis on communication within the team. And as far as I know, you also had someone on your squad that was I heard that you had someone actually in your team that was very much focused on things like communication.
We had one person who would help us, basically would listen in on our scrims, for example, and then he would give his input on how our communication was being dealt. So we definitely had some outside help, which he gave some really good points that we could work on. Fortunately, we didn't have enough time to really make perfect use of it, but communication was definitely key. It is for every team, for sure.
And I feel like with especially No-Tail, for example, I have the impression he's another person that, I don't know, is like a hard person, to put it that way. How would you think is the communication in this team? Do you still place a lot of value on that? And what are the things that you try to make sure to watch when you talk to your team about difficult topics?
In this team, we have a very nice approach to how we want to play and communicate, where we want to stay positive no matter what. So say, for example, somebody died during the game in some silly way. We're not going to go, like, oh, why'd you die there? We'll be like, it's all right, it's all good. And we try not to go too crazy. Even if we're winning a fight, for example, it's okay to cheer up a little bit, but we don't want to be yelling like crazy because then you kind of lose focus of actually what's happening. So we're keeping it like at a sort of a medium level of, cheerfulness. We're definitely improving our communication all the time. But yeah, the key thing is basically to stay positive. That's the biggest thing for us. So that's what we aim for every time.
So now the next match will be against the Virtus Pro, another elimination best of 3. People are very impressed with your guys' performance throughout this tournament. Before we talk about the Virtus Pro match, I did want to get that in. Are you satisfied with the way you guys have been performing here?
I think we've had a pretty rough first day, but we kind of talked a little bit together, and now we have a better feeling towards the tournament and how we want to play everything. So I think the first day kind of put us in a much better position towards the rest of the tournament, not just from the group placing where we actually had to play Fnatic, and Maneski instead of Vega, who actually had to play EG and eHome, who I consider better teams in both aspects, but also that we as a team we realized we had to do something different, and now we're all on the same page, and now we're really comfortable.
All right, so you now got that kind of wake-up call. You're in the zone now, focused, know what it's about, and up against Virtus Pro. So in terms of play style, how is it gonna go? Do you have a certain approach? What are you gonna be watching out for when it comes to trying to take on VP?
VP is definitely one of the better teams. I think they have really good team play, and G is like definitely one of the better mid players. You don't want to really give that guy a good game. He can snowball very heavily. So obviously VP has all their the little niche picks with the Broodmother and the Drow Ranger and all these heroes that they run very well, and that's kind of unique to them. So we obviously have to be we either have to have a plan towards it, or we want to ban it at a certain stage. I can't say what we're gonna do. I don't want to give it away, but they're definitely a good team, and we're gonna prepare properly for them.
Okay. So I'm gonna take it that you do have a certain play style or something specially prepared for Virtus Pro in terms of draft or play style that we're probably gonna see when you're gonna play, and I'm very much looking forward to that. So I do want to thank you very much for taking the time. Is there anything that you still want to get out there? Any shout outs or anything?
Just